Hello, chess geeks. So this is Ravi here, back once again with a Sicilian game, and which has a kingside attack. And I'm sure that you will love to see the game, and you will enjoy it and also learn from it. So without wasting any further time, let's go ahead. E4, C5, knight F3, G6. So this is a accelerated dragon. Okay. So to encounter this accelerated dragon, what I do is that I try to form a large pawn center. C3. And what's the objective? C3 and D4. And black will exchange the C pawn with the D pawn. And I will have two pawns in the center on D4 and E4. Okay, bishop G7, D4, C takes D, C takes D, and D5, straight cut. Okay, so now on d5, what I can do is that I can exchange my e pawn with the d pawn, but in that case, I will have an isolated pawn in the center, which is the d pawn. I don't want to have the isolated pawn because what I feel is that it will create a too much of pressure. The bishop is already on g7, and the knight can come to c6, and queen can come to b6 and attack my pawn. So I didn't want to frame an isolated pawn, so I move forward. I played the move e5. So playing e5 has some good things. What happens is there now the bishop on g7, it will not be too much active. According to Nimzovich, there is a saying that bishop bites the granite. So it means that this bishop will have its target on the e5 pawn, which is further protected by this knight on f3 and this d pawn. So to make this bishop inactive, I gave this move e5. And also, I don't want to create an isolated pawn, so I moved ahead and gave e5. Okay. Now knight c6, usual move, knight c3, bishop to g4, bishop to e2, simple moves, e6 and castle, knight g to e7 and bishop to g5. Okay. So this bishop comes to g5 and it pins the knight and with the queen. So here, black doesn't want this bishop to stay on g5 because it's the most active piece, and he plays h6. Okay, bishop drops back to f4, nothing special. Castle on the king side, and queen to d2. Okay, so now queen is eyeing this queen, and this bishop is eyeing the pawn on s6. The king comes to the rescue, king to h7, and rook f2 d1. Now, why I move this rook f2 d1 is that because I know that if, let's say, in future, if this bishop on g4 takes my knight on f3, then my knight will come to this f3 square. And in case my queen moves from here, then this d pawn will left unprotected. So I move this rook to f2 d1 because I wanted to protect my pawn on d4. Okay, some of you may ask, why not rook a to d1? I didn't make this move rook a to d1 because of the reason I believe the c file is already open. So if this knight on c3 and the knight on c6 moves out, then this c file needs to be controlled. So in that case, I thought that this rook on a1 might control my c file. The placing of the rooks in the middle game is a very important aspect. That's what I wanted to feature. Okay. Let's move ahead. A6, a very simple move. Like I don't know why A6 is being played because the bishop is not going to B5 at all. I think this is a total waste of time. Okay, now bishop comes to G3. Why I made the bishop back to G3? Okay, with the next move, you will understand the reason behind it. If you see, the all the pieces of white and black are almost protected except this bishop on G4. Black's bishop on G4 is not protected. And you will see what happens next. Okay, b5, b5, it comes to attack this knight maybe on c3. Okay, no problem. Knight to g5 check. Okay, why I gave this knight to g5 check? The only reason is because I wanted to exchange this bishop. And black has to take this knight because if the king goes to h8 or g8, then I'll simply take the bishop, and on the next move, if black doesn't take the knight, then I'll be piece up. So black takes the knight as usual. Bishop takes on g4. Okay, now bishop after this bishop is on g4. If you see, the king side of black, I will not say it is like weak, but still I have some prospects to attack. Now this pawn on g5, it is unprotected. Okay, so what happens next? Pawn, this knight on e7 comes to f5. This f5 move by the knight is, I will say, a good move. The knight becomes an active piece, and this pawn is being protected by the queen on d8. Okay, so in the next move, I take this knight on f5, because the knight on f5 and the knight on c6 was attacking my d4 pawn, which I can't allow that to happen. None of my minor pieces are able to save this d pawn. So this bishop on g4 was definitely a very bad bishop, I will say. So I exchanged a good knight against my bad bishop. This bishop on g4 had like nothing to do. Like it doesn't have any too much of targets and prospects. So I exchanged this bishop with this good knight. So black recaptures with his g pawn, and the next move I give is f4. Now, why f4? Because my this bishop would have been trapped if I would have allowed black to take. I would have allowed black to play f4. So white plays f4 himself. F4, bishop to s6. Now it tries to put more pressure on this f4 pawn. Okay, I moved my rook from a to c1 as I explained earlier. Why am I like trying to capture the c file? Okay, black also does the same. Rook c8, knight to e2. Knight to e2. What it does is that it comes with a more central control. Knight on c3 didn't have too many squares to go. The knight cannot go ahead. So knight comes to e2, where it is protecting the f4 pawn and also the d4 pawn. Okay, black sees that like white's pieces are coordinating on the king side, so he tries to close it with the move g4, pawn to g4. Now, looking at this position for some time, if you see, and let's discuss what are the prospects of white and black. Okay, only like you can see some minor pieces have been exchanged, but if you see the queen side, like there is nothing like that you can do too much. Well, the white rook on c1 can come to this square, which is c5 square. It I can go for a queenside attack, but I love to do a kingside attack. So I thought of let's go towards the king side. So next move is queen to e1. Now queen to e1, because I want to capture this diagonal, this e1 and h4 diagonal. Okay, black queen now comes to a5. He wants to exchange the queens, which I don't want that to happen. So I give rook to c3. Now placing the rook to c3, some of you may say that I am just losing my queenside pawns on a2 and b2, but I am giving this queenside pawns in return of some favor. And the favor is that I want to focus more on the king side. So the queen right now is on the queen side, and my queen is eyeing towards the king side. Okay, queen takes a2. Okay, I give my rook to c1, rook d2 c1, and I try to attack this knight. Knight to a7. Okay, I give bishop to h4. Now, bishop to h4, my reason is because I'm giving this bishop because I want to come here. The bishop on g5, and then queen I want to place on h4. So that's my idea. That's my strategy. Okay, queen takes on b2. So right now, if you see, black is 2 pawns up. So, and white doesn't have any compensation against it. But the reason is that the placement of the pieces. Just look and what's like going ahead. Okay, bishop to g5. Now, bishop to g5, I want to exchange this bishop. Now, if this bishop is exchanged, so what will happen is that this f pawn will go forward, it will come to g5, and my knight will again jump to this f4 square later on. And moreover, my queen can come to h4, giving a check to the black king. Okay. Uh, Black exchanges the rook, and he gives up the control of the c file. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook. Now, this is the most, like, grave mistake I will say from black. Black, he drops the bishop back to d7 and he allows the check on h4. So here it was, I'm just getting tempo here on his king, and his king has to go to g8. No other squares are left, and black sees that he can take this knight, but my king comes forward to the rescue, and my king is absolutely safe here. King to f2. King to f2 is the most precise move, because if I give any other move, then this knight will drop, and if the knight drops, my rook will also be left unprotected. Okay, now black gives this move, which is again a blunder. Black doesn't sense the upcoming danger. So if you see, I'm not playing with a low rated player. I'm playing with a player which is 2200 plus, 2200 elo plus. So that means this guy has he is a sort of a master, and he doesn't sense the danger here. So he attacks the rook from his with his b4 pawn, but I give this bishop to f6. Now this is a very well-known pattern where black king can get checkmated, but I don't know why black doesn't do anything about that. Now knight comes to a7. Sorry, from a7 to b5. It attacks the rook again. The queen comes to g5. Now after the queen comes to g5, it's all over. Now black sacrifices the queen so that it can give a check. Nothing happens. King takes on e2, and then knight to c3 check, king to e1. So after this, there is nothing. So this player, after he encounters this position, he just resigns. So you see, what are the things that you learned here? Like, if you want, you can attack on the king side with the strategy in your mind, and to attack on the king side, sometimes you have to give up some of your material. I gave the a2 and the b2 pawns in that aspect, and I exchanged the f5 knight with my bishop on g4. So that was a good exchange, I believe. It was a good exchange of a bad bishop against a good knight. So I hope this game surely enlightens you in some aspects. I don't show the games of the grandmasters, but I show the games of my own and other simple players, because majority of the chess players, they belong to my rating category. I hope from here you can surely improve your game by looking at this game. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.